Latin Women in the United States by Brenda Vargas. The Rad 70s. Many events swirled about during the 70s. President Nixon's Watergate scandal, Roe v. Wade, the invention of Microsoft, the fresh beginning of Saturday Night Live, and the end of the life of the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Many of these occasions are written in history books, but there are some underground issues that are either briefly mentioned or not discussed at all. Latino women were part of the 70s culture and the economy of the time. As a matter of fact, Latino women greatly contributed to American society and economical development in the 1970s, looking closely at the type of work and standing that they had compared to their male counterparts and majority population. Before the 70s. Some background before the 70s was the civil rights movement that highlighted the injustices many minorities faced with the American policy that oppressed those that were not of European origin. This sparked the women's civil rights movement that writers Alfredo Miranda and Evangelina Enriquez of La Chicana stated it was an attempt to show that women were subjected to differential and unequal treatment. And the assembly reached its peak during the early 70s. Although the women's movement was aiming to bring more equality amongst all women, the emphasis was on middle-class Anglo women. Some Chicana action. It all began with the rise of the Chicano nationalist movement in the 1970s. Women and men took a common side, but realized that they were divided within their own group with the male beliefs of machismo, which is defined by the Merriam-Webster dictionary as a strong sense of masculine pride, a belief common amongst Latin American countries. Women broke off from the group in 1971 and had their first official meeting in Houston, Texas, called the First National Chicana Conference. Cultural roles. The typical role for males was to be the main family supporter, where women were expected to raise a family. As a matter of fact, in a 1969 census record, it indicated that women that originated from Mexico alone had about 47% more children of another woman of any race. Most Latinos came for jobs in the States to support the families they have back at home. There was a lot of job offerings during those times, and my mother, Damiana Rubalcaba, and her siblings came to the States to work for a sewing factory in San Jose. This is a picture of my Aunt Lupe Hernandez on her birthday. She wasn't exactly the most chipper in the picture, but she was posing with her children up top and her nephews and nieces on the bottom. She eventually had more children than those that are pictured, totaling with 8 bundles of joy, not topping the number of siblings she has, which are 10. Taking the magnifying glass. California during this period, according to Margarita B. Melville, author of Twice a Minority Mexican American Women. Women were beginning to seek independence from their husbands and becoming the head of their households. 14.7% out of the total 18.1% were single Latinas with families. The typical Latina mothers had 2 children and had troubles keeping their heads above the water economically. They usually encountered discrimination among landlords, which made it difficult for their families to settle. But eventually they found a female ghetto in the east side San Jose, where there was a diverse mix of Anglo, Black, and Mexican American cultures. There is a high number of female heads in this area. This is my mother and her niece Benigna, whose mother had a tough time in San Jose. A new culture. Due to the mix of Anglo and Mexican tradition, Mexican American mothers tried to contribute to their families as much as possible. Quote, Mexican American women are expected to be mothers, first and foremost, but they are also expected to be economically active outside the domestic sphere wherever possible, contributing to the well-being of their families and their communities. End quote. From Twice a Minority, Mexican American Women. These motherly changes are usually the epitome of a Latina's life. Fathers, on the other hand, are expected to support the family and make important decisions, although usually in those days women were able to incorporate their opinions on important issues concerning the family's well-being. In this picture, it's of my mom and her sisters and a niece at a park, enjoying a weekend after a long week's worth of work. Final conclusions. Overall, Latina women overcame some cultural boundaries in the United States. Single women were able to successfully find a home in the east side of San Jose to raise their families. And from my mother's experience, she enjoyed her motherhood in the U.S., always working hard along with my father's support to the family as well. This is a picture of my mother at school learning English in 1975, a mark of her independence.